Okay, welcome to the Outer Circle Inner Stillness, conversations and reflections on spirituality, sobriety, and all of the network of relationships that go into making all of those possible. So here we are today, the day we're recording. It's really cold, really windy in Gresham, and those of you outside of the Portland area won't care at all. But anyway, I am glad to be here with you all and with a good friend and colleague and fellow sojourner, pilgrimer through life, Ahshuwah Hawthorne, and here to talk about friendship and things. So, hello, Ahshuwah. How are you?
Yeah, good to see you, Reese. Stoked to be here.
Excellent. I'm glad you're here too. So, for some context, who are you? What's your corner of the world? And something interesting about you.
Sure. Well, I'm originally from the island of Hawaii, so I grew up as an islander in the tropics, and that's a big part of my heritage and identity. And then I decided to venture off the island and live in the mainland. Went to college in Portland, Oregon, where I met my wife Sharon, and we got married shortly after that. Did some island adventuring. We started a church for you could say non-churched spiritually minded people in our community back on the island, and started our family. We now have 7 kids, and we moved in 2010 back to Portland to live life here, and have been there ever since. And I enjoy working with immigrant and international student communities. That's just kind of been my area of work and vocation, serving and working with those communities. And yeah, I enjoyed being a dad. I enjoy martial arts and working out. And eventually, our family would love to get a house out in the country and do some farming. But currently, we're in the kind of the urban sprawl of Portland, Oregon.
Yep. One of the things that I resonate with in your experience, sadly not the experience in Hawaii, that sounds really lovely in a lot of ways, but just the experience of having done a lot of things, been a lot of places, tried on a lot of different hats, taken on some different roles, lots of different projects as well. Something about that speaks very dearly to kind of the rhythms of my own life. I've just, I lived in California, Arizona, Southern Oregon, Northern Oregon. I'm just migrating north and picking up projects and credentials and communities along the way. So it feels enriching. Sometimes it feels chaotic, but well, it's my life, so that's what I know. So yeah, so you'd when we were talking about this, you'd floated this idea of talking about friendships, and especially friendships between men. How do men make friends with other men that are, healthy, non-toxic, non-sexual, non-domineering? And I love this topic. It comes up personally and professionally. Personally, I mean, I consider myself a reasonably nice guy, and generally pretty friendly, but have had these periods of time over my life where just like connecting with people, even going back as far as high school. Okay, high school is its own scenario, but like, sometimes just running into these like baffling obstacles to be like, I want to connect with this guy. Like, how do I do that in a safe way, in a consistent way? And there's some barriers there. And as I'm working with clients who are pursuing, sobriety, pursuing recovery, pursuing a greater insight into themselves and a greater just presence, more mindful approach, often it comes up, oh yeah, I'm really lonely, or I'd like to connect more deeply, but I don't know how, or I'm scared to, or something. So so talking with other guys about how to connect with other people is really, really relevant to the work that I do and just the life that I live. So I'd love to hear more from you. Like what makes this topic important for you? And yeah, how did you come to this topic?
Yeah. So I think it goes back to my upbringing. And so I grew up raised by a single mom and an only child. and so that reality of growing up in that context means that I had to, at home at least, like kind of create my own friends with my imagination, and as well as, so there's this gap of not having a father figure, and so there's that missing element in my own, you could say, masculine formation in my life. And it was a largely stable, loving home, but just missing that aspect of my formation. And then I didn't have siblings. So then that other aspect of like both masculine kind of father relationships was very lacking. The only men in my life were my mom's boyfriends that very rarely thought it was of a priority in their life to befriend or mentor me. And then the other side, if you don't have those sibling relationships, so you learn to be friends with yourself, and so there was a lot of active imagination, a lot of just learning to entertain myself, and then you have friends, and you can dig in deep in those friendships. And I feel like in general I had like a few healthy, strong, close friends growing up, and they were important for me. But as a young kid, you don't really know what friendship is. I mean, you like, I had friends and we played role-playing games, or we liked playing video games, or we liked video production. So you find some hobby and you do something together, and those are real friendships. But at least for me, I found it was during college is when, as you go out into the world, that the friendships that you gain there can stay with you and continue the rest of your life. And so that, I feel like my journey in friendship has been learning, you could say, like learning adulting, learning what it means to be a man, what it means to be a father, what it means to be a husband, but needing to do it through friendship. I feel like that's kind of what the origin story of how that how friendships have been a valuable part of my life.
Are you talking about faced with the developmental task of, like, I have to grow up and figure out who I am? That something like that is facilitated by the relationships in your life.
Yeah. I don't really know how else you would do it. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of like self-learning on the internet. You're like, oh, okay, how do I fix this? How do I do this? Okay, YouTube it, right? And there's a lot of kind of these arm's length, anonymous mentoring, fathering relationships, I think that young men pursue. And you have there's a technical term of the manosphere, right? Like the blogosphere, and there's all these, oh, well, I'm a Jordan Peterson guy, or I'm a Tate guy, or all these different, for good or for ill, right? There's all these different masculine role models that men, when they don't have them in like meat space in real life, right? They find them in virtual life, but it's a very consumptive type of relationship. And I definitely had that. For me, I was in Bible college, so it was a lot of like preaching kind of relationships, of I'm learning from this Christian leader. But then it also, and I mean, this is a whole other topic of the toxicity, as well as the health and I would say fruit of guys like a Mark Driscoll, that were spiritual leaders, but they were also, they presented a type of practical, like, here's how to be a man teaching for young Christian men that didn't have that in their life. And so for good or for ill, I had a bunch of that in my kind of formative college years, and very much gravitated to those type of virtual mentorship relationships, because I didn't have many of them in real life.
Yeah. There's something interesting going on there, where so for myself, I managed to dodge the whole Mark Driscoll scenario, mostly. So in retrospect, I think I'm grateful for that. But even in just like your brief recounting of it, there's a sense of, here's this guy who's making himself to be the spiritual mentor, but maybe not a mentor in other ways, or in some way, like kind of like disconnect, looking at a person as these disconnected elements. Like, I'll have my spiritual self over there, I'll get my financial mentoring over there, I'll do like my coach at the gym over here, I'll have my sex life way back there, or something. Um, and then the way you were relating it kind of carries a sense of like all of these things are like kind of disconnected, and maybe there was a problem with that. And I wonder, am I catching that right from you, or what's your thought?
Yeah, I mean, so I think there's an issue when I have a virtual one-way mentorship with like a celebrity personality, without meet space relationships and actual give and take, interdependent friendships. And so, but I would actually, I mean, add to the idea of the kind of compartmentalization of those things in virtual space. I think that can happen, right? This is my guy that helps me with my finances. This is my guy that's my like spiritual mentor, and that's easy to happen. I feel like in real life, I've done that in my friendships, but I think that's been, at least for me, it's been healthy and really helpful, because it's helped me. So going back to my own lack of a father figure, there can be a tendency and a desire to find that father figure in another man or another person, and then you put a lot of emotional investment into that relationship, and often that relationship cannot bear the weight of the baggage that you and investment and expectations you put into it. And so I found myself in my kind of early adult years, and some in the high school years, finding older men putting like a heavy expectation of this is a father figure in my life, and almost to a person, those relationships all ended up significantly underperforming the expectations that I put on them, and in different ways that then causes harm to that relationship, right? And so I had to adjust expectations in my like older male relationships, and just say, well, you know what? Instead of looking for like a Jesus, like a father figure, like a perfect, this is the ultimate mentor, kind of par excellence, like thing that we're all looking for. I'm instead going to invest in peer relationships and make myself known and seek to love the men that God's put in my life, and make myself a student of them in the area that I feel they can most help me grow. And in the area that they most like. Guys just like to share. If you're good at something, I believe that God's wired men to want to share that and want to be admired in that thing that we're good at. Right? It's a part of our self-worth and dignity. And so in a friendship, when like for an example, one friend that really knew finances well, he had his MBA and he had invested well, and he had a very well-paying job, was saving a lot, would still give generously, he lived frugally. And I'm like, wow, I admire that about you. And I didn't, that was a gap in my growing up, was managing finances. I wasn't a part of how what I learned as a young man. And so I said, teach me investing, teach me personal finance. And of course he was stoked, because he's like, wow, okay, this guy wants to learn. And he spent a lot of his time growing in that area. And so here we have this relationship where it's a genuine give and take friendship. And there's other areas in life where I think benefiting him, but I'm like a sponge sucking up this help. And he likes then having a comrade to talk investing and to talk finance, because pretty quickly, if you're a ravenous learner and you genuinely want to grow in something, you're going to then reach the level of the person that's teaching you, especially if it's a peer kind of relationship and not someone that's like 30 years your senior. So then really quickly, we could be like, well, okay, now, hey, I did this research into this investment kind of option. What do you think about that? And now there's give and take. And so I find that I've done that in different spheres of my life with friends, and it's actually been very kind of integrating of the different aspects of my life, as opposed to disintegrating, because they're real friendships and not just these virtual kind of quasi mentors.
Yeah, yeah. I love that idea of really looking for like what are the strengths of the people in my life. Like, you know, here's my guy who knows finances. You know, here's my guy who knows nutrition. You know, here's my writing buddy or something. And it does. Yeah, it feels like there's this way of developing this really rich tapestry of like here's all of these really skilled people. Yeah. So I guess a little tangent to go on. So talking about like a real friendship. And I hear you making a difference between virtual connections, especially these virtual only connections, and those happening in the meet space, in the space where we actually physically meet. And I do think that difference is really important. Even within that, though, assume let's assume we are able to actually be physically in proximity together. What are you? One of my things is that one of the challenges we're facing is we may not even recognize what a true connection, true friendship is altogether. My sense, and let me know what you're thinking, is that when we go to try to establish a connection, you know, first we'll, you know, try to get a sense of like, is this person safe? Kind of a buzzword, you know, what do we mean by safe? You know, do we just mean someone who always agrees with me, someone who's very nice to me, someone who never challenges me, or someone who's able to like fully hold the full weight of my life with them? So getting a sense for that is a thing. But I get the sense too that, you know, some people, when they think, oh, this is a good friendship, it's because we have a lot of things in common, or in some cases, like we can play together well, or your specific passions match up with my specific passions. And I wonder sometimes if that's a little bit of a fallacy of thinking like the best relationships in my life will be the ones with like the most overlap in our Venn diagrams. And I'm wondering if like there's something different that marks, well, this is a deep relationship, this is a true relationship, like this is a solid, pristine friendship. Curious your thoughts there.
Yeah, I guess it's a great question. So the author C.S. Lewis, he has a great book called The Four Loves, where he talks about, and he uses the different Greek words for love, and he compares them and kind of teases out the implications there. And this was actually pretty formative in my life early on. I read the book in high school, and so one of the distinctions he makes is eros, right? So we would know the term erotic, but and then he kind of contrasts that or compares that to phileo love, the philos, right? Which is more of a friendship love. And he uses this analogy between the two of the eros, are two lovers sitting on like a park bench together, and they're facing inward. They're facing to one another, and so they are just transfixed on the other person, and it's a love that's focused on the beloved, and they will then talk about their love for one another. This will be an important part of what brings them together, and they interact on the delight of the other person. Where in contrast, the phileo love is two people on a park bench looking outwards at a common horizon, a common passion, and an interest that brings them together. And so that's that friendship love, that there is a shared mission in life, a shared interest that brings them together. They're not going to spend their time transfixed on the other person. They're brought together because of a shared passion. Now that can, I think in modern culture, that can turn into something that's glib and and shallow, which is kind of what you're getting at, because you're like, oh yeah, well, these are my bowling buddies. What brings together? Oh, we bowl together. Well, okay. Well, tell me about George. How's his marriage? How's his relationship with his kids? What's he struggle with? I don't know. He's my bowling buddy, right? We don't go there.
Yeah.
So, and I think so. I don't think that's what Lewis means. He doesn't mean, oh, it's your bowling buddies, and that's phileo love. I think what he means is that the friendship love, we're brought together on a common horizon and mission and purpose, but we're brought together over it, and now we interact and love one another, not just that common horizon. And so if in your friendships it's only the bowling or the gaming or the fishing or whatnot, and there's not phileo love for the other men that you're joining in, okay, you love bowling, okay, fine, and bowling alone sucks, got it, okay. So I would argue, I would say, like, this friendship love is not an eros, erotic love, and it's not just, oh, I don't want to bowl alone, so I'm gonna do it with a group. There actually is a genuine masculine love, a phileo love that grows because of a common horizon, that transcends that common horizon, but does not exist apart from it. And I would, like, I mean, just a couple more examples, like one friend that comes to mind. We got to know each other because I was his boss for a time where we had a team of folks that we were working with refugees in our community, and so he was on my team, and I was the team leader, and so we had a kind of, and it was it was more in a nonprofit sector kind of volunteer thing, so it wasn't like an employment relationship, but it was still like, hey, I'm an older man, he's a single guy, there's some mentorship, there's some like accountability in this relationship, and a little bit of a power difference there, and so that's where the relationship grew, and so I wouldn't call that a friendship. I would call that a companionship. We had a common horizon, a common mission of the work we were doing, and so that was a context where we got to know each other, but we weren't yet, I would say, close friends. When that context changed, we were no longer in this kind of team member, team leader relationship, and he moved on. We had a choice. We could have been like, okay, it's good working with you, see you later, or we could have invested into now a new context of a friendship, and we ended up doing that. And there was, and I would say, and this has happened in a lot of my friendships, is at least one person has to do the pursuing, and you do the pursuing, and through that you kind of decide, is this worth the pursuing, and is there a reciprocation on the other end? And so, like, for this friend, he's like the GQ of my friends. If I need fashion advice, and he's a very man's man kind of guy. If I have an issue with my car or my truck, he's got advice. If I'm buying a used vehicle, he can help me with that. Like, and you can just kind of put up whatever quintessential, like, man's man kind of like, you should be able to fix this and know this, like that kind of guy. That's him. Only add in the GQ fashion piece in there too. And so I'm just calling him up. Hey, I need fashion advice. Does this fit with this? Or I need to repair this. What do you think? And then he needed some finance advice and some business advice. And so now he's calling me. Hey, what do you think about this? Should I do this investment? Should I try this? And so then that kind of grew in that area. And there's a power when in a relationship, when you're like, you step out of a place of authority and you come under another brother, another man. So, like, even though I was older and more experienced, I had dealt with some health issues. I had dealt with a disc issue in my lower back that led to a sciatica issue. It led to a knee surgery and a torn meniscus and all these things. And I was kind of a mess physically a few years ago. And this particular friend, he's also a personal trainer and a nutritionist. And I'm just like, dude, I need help. I can't get back on track physically on my own. I'm just too undisciplined. I'm too sporadic in my life schedule. I need your help. And so he's just like, okay, well, here's what I'm doing for my diet, for my workout regimen, and for my kind of recouping my back issues and all this. And I'm like, okay. And so then I kind of came under his tutelage and his mentorship in this area. And that built a lot more trust in our relationship, a lot more give and take, and really benefited me. But it's a type of benefit where it's not like he feels like, oh, he's going to calling me again, like this sucks, or like, I mean, he gets paid, like other people pay him for the type of service he's offering me, but because there's this give and take relationship and holistically in all the areas in life, then he's like, dude, of course it's pro bono. Of course I want to share this with you because it's not a burden for him. It's kind of fun, and he can practice. He can throw out his experimental ideas on me.
Yeah. I think I hear that.
There you go.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I mean, I think I hear that kind of concern come up for people when they're thinking about, maybe I'll reach out to somebody. A concern is often, what about my capacity? Or we could say, what about my boundaries? Is this person going to just need my help all the time? Are they going to be more of an emotional strain and emotional investment that I'm ready for? So which that can happen. It sounds like the way that you've experienced these friendships, or the way that they're set up, is built to be more mutual. I have something you want, you have something I want. And so there's definitely that transaction going on. I wonder if you could speak to, though, like what exists beyond the transaction. I guess my presupposition is that for something like that, for a relationship like that to become like an enduring friendship, there would have to be something more than just the exchange of like, oh, here's my expertise for your expertise. Here's my financial advice for your fashion advice. What's your sense?
Yeah, I mean, so, and as another example that I think will get to answering this question is, so that I have several different group threads, right, of groups of friends that tend to talk about one or two topics. And so if I want to get into talk Bitcoin, I have a group of Bitcoin friends, and we can talk about that, and we can nerd out about that thing. Or if there's another kind of topic that I want to engage in, I might have other friends that are going to talk about this topic. And so there is still that common horizon, that specific interest. But then myself and a couple other friends that are rather old friends from years ago that we've stayed in touch with each other. So we have a mutual friend that was going through a significant challenge in life. He's dealing with some marriage challenges, and that then brought up that topic for this group of friends, where we're usually, hey, we're going to talk about Bitcoin, or we're going to talk about like starting new companies and business ideas or technology. Like those are the interests. But it's like, hey, we're talking about this mutual friend. And then we're saying, hey, okay, well, how is your marriage? How are you doing in this season in life? And so it does have to, like, you find really quick, okay, does this not go below surface? Are you not willing to be vulnerable when like, if you have a friendship over a number of years, like junk's going to hit the fan, like you're going to go through different seasons, and it's like that friendship might be there, and there's trust and history. And then when the need and the crisis comes up, that's when you know, okay, this is also a friendship that I can put my stuff out on the table. and get some good feedback. And so that's where I've found that even when there's not, like, it's more casual, right? You're just connected, but you have history, and you're willing to go there when you need to go there. And so that's where a lot of the friendships is more kind of casual like that. But I think there's also the goodness in having a deliberate. So like I have another friend where it's a semi-regular, hey, we're going to meet and we're just going to ask each other hard questions about how is this aspect of your life, right? Are you living according to your values and ideals, the things you say you want to live according to? Are you doing that? And this is a friendship I feel like in church, kind of church culture, it's common to have like a committed structure, like a small group. Like, these are your assigned friends that you meet with every other week, and you're going to do a Bible study, you're going to share a meal, and you're going to talk and pray for each other. And it's not based on you choosing those friendships, right? It's really just based on, hey, this is the people in the neighborhood or the people that happen to join the group. And that might even happen with like an accountability partner kind of pairing. So I have those, like I have like a small group in my life where it's not, you didn't pick your friends, right? They're just there. And I see a value of that in church life, because it's like family life, right? You don't pick your uncle and your cousins. You just have them. And it's healthy in life to like, hey, I'm just going to learn to love the people that are around me. Now, my whole life is not going to be consumed with those relationships, but I think that's important to have. But for those most vulnerable relationships, there's like a lot of history. Like we're talking 20 plus years of history of relationships and trust. And then you add a little bit of teeth to the accountability piece of like, you know what? I want to have someone in my life that can ask me hard questions. And so I'm just going to deliberately, as a guy, like I have to be scheduled and disciplined or it'll never happen. Especially hard conversations, kind of almost like you might do with your spouse. You're like, hey, let's just do a monthly check-in where we just kind of say, hey, we're going to be honest here. How are we doing? Right. If you put that rhythm in your life so that it doesn't like, it's not just, oh, it boils over and then it explodes and then we have to clean up the mess. You're like, no. Let's just take the lid off, give it a stir, see how the soup's doing before it boils over.
Right.
So I try to have that in my friendships too.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, those stir in the pot conversations don't tend to spontaneously come up in a peaceful way. It's like we either schedule them to happen peacefully or they explode at inconvenient times. So yeah. I like that idea. I love that idea of like in the different strata of what a friendship could be. Having some friendships that can exist in like the fun and the playful, some that can exist also at the far horizons, but then some that can also exist down in the depths. This friendship where we have both the permission and a familiar routine of we ask each other hard questions. And you've used the phrase a couple of times, like here, this friendship, like we go there or we don't go there, or something. And I think if I'm catching your usage, it's talking about going there to a place of more vulnerability, more discomfort, more, we're not just talking about this thing out there, but we're actually talking about each other. Here's a concern I have for you. Here's how you're affecting me. That's that much more intimate space that can be entirely divorced from anything erotic, but there's this very deep intimacy that can happen there. And per your observations, what do you perceive are some barriers that men face to going there, to that sort of deeper share space?
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone's going to be different, and I don't feel like I have a lot of like, I can't speak beyond both my own experience and maybe those of my closer friends. But I mean, there's that question of safety and will I be judged? I find that yeah, like vulnerability is contagious, and so are putting on airs. And if you're like, oh yeah, we all just play nice and like make believe in this community or in this circle, then that's what everyone does. um or you realize, oh, okay, there's room to be less than perfect, um and to share more your issues. Like, then I think you discover that that's okay, that's appropriate for this relationship. I find that off like even more often than, okay, hey, can I be vulnerable with my own issues? I think friendships, to continue, you need to be able to deal with the issues in the friendship, right? Right, like where and this is, I mean, comes to mind in some recent work relationships where like um my a team I work with, I've really grown in friendship with the guys, and I enjoy working with them, and we have this common horizon that we're pursuing. And through the last couple of years, now we consider each other friends, and we're thinking about, hey, we could do a family vacation together. um and and yet within that, because you're working together, things can come up where it's like, hey, I sent an email, and then a guy was frustrated by it, and he sends a quick response that then I'm like, oh, okay, that's now all my defenses come up, because he was offended by that, or he like corrected me, and I'm like, whoa, okay. um so I think in that, within the relationship, the harder conversation actually is, hey, let's talk about that interaction we just had, and like, how did what I said trigger you, and then how did when your response trigger me, and kind of being willing to go there in that friendship, so that it can continue, and that thing doesn't fester. And I think that's a bigger barrier to guys' friendships, is like, isn't as much like, oh, am I willing to be vulnerable, but like, am I willing to work for the friendship and be vulnerable to help the friendship kind of. It's almost like if you think about being a father and you're raising a kid, there's some awkward adolescent stages and awkward, like, terrible twos where you have to figure out, hey, what's this parenting thing? What's this relationship with this child? I think friendships go through similar stages where you break through different barriers, and you got to be willing to put in the hard work to help the friendship grow.
Mm-hmm. I think so. Then there's some neuroscience and attachment things that go into that too. This idea of like, when we talk about like the interpersonal neurobiology and like affect regulation and some things like that, it's very much built on the shifting from like a left brain connection that's very like data and information oriented, and very much into this right brain connection that's very sensory, very embodied, very body and emotion oriented, and that tends to be the kind of connection that we're wired for, that we're most craving, because it has to do with like, this person is fully present with me, and this person is fully welcoming my whole experience literally into their inner world. They say we create like an if I'm doing that for you, I'm creating an internal representation of your internal state within my own mind, and allowing that to be there without judgment, without censorship. And that takes work, that takes courage, that takes training, or practice anyway. And in that sort of connection, we're going to really feel each other's ripples a lot more. So you frown at me, you say something cross, I don't make eye contact, I miss something that was important, I miss a cue, you were extending something important to me and I dropped it. We're going to feel those in the relationship. And so I think what you're saying, and I really agree, that to be able to be really actively aware of like, here's how we're impacting each other real time in the moment, in the body.
Mm-hmm.
And then being able to say, if like, hey, this thing didn't feel good, I need something from you, or I need to reconnect, or I'm feeling a need for a little bit more connection, and I feel like you're distant. Can I call you back to me for a little bit? In the relationships where we're sharing living space with them, I mean, that's going to happen a lot more frequently. In these other relationships where, here's where I go on a rant about, we're just too busy. Two busy guys who have families and work and companies and projects and other communities, who we may not see each other more than once a month, to have a rupture and then to repair it. Like you'd made the small comment about like holding that as valuable, or finding the relationship worth the investment of the time and labor it takes to repair it. And that's something that I notice is missing for some people. Is A, a lot of people just don't have relationships like this, and B, a lot of people don't have a sense of a relationship is a thing worth fighting for. And so I don't know. I guess that's a challenge. I wonder. I don't know, to somebody who's like not quite seeing the value of relationship, or much less of like fighting for it. Wonder what are some thoughts, perspectives you might share to that person.
Yeah. So I think that point is huge, is being willing to work for it. And so it's a question of values, right? We're all going to make decisions about what we value, what we spend our time on. And even the most busy people, right? That's a big part of our culture. When you actually step back and look, like, what do you value? Like, well, when your new whatever TV season comes out of your favorite show, like, lo and behold, you have time to watch that show, and you find a way to do it. And so it does have to be a value. And I would say the fruit and the benefit that comes from strong masculine friendships is like a fruit that comes as a result of sowing. It's a reaping that comes over many years of sowing, and there is a delayed gratification to it. And so and it's a deliberate decision of like, okay, I'm driving, I'm on my commute, and I can listen to the podcast. I can try to make a business call or whatever, or I'm going to call my buddy and see how he's doing. And I have a list of those buddies, and it's like, okay, I'm gonna take that downtime and make that call. And you can say, call it a sacrifice. You're like, I'm doing that instead of something else. But it's just a regular investment of work, of being willing. It's a text thread of like, okay, I found, hey, this cool thing, rather than just being like, oh, that's cool, and I'm gonna keep swiping up and looking at other things. It's like, oh, so and so would like this. I'm gonna share it with them. And I'm not a big Facebook guy, where everything kind of gets blasted out and then everyone can kind of respond. But if I see something I think someone else is gonna like, I'm gonna send it directly to them, or to a certain group that I'm in, and I'm gonna send it to them and let them look, and then that's going to start a conversation with them that we're able to interact with, and so that's what I would say. What one piece is it takes work, and it's the small things. It's often connected to things I'm already doing, I'm already interested in, but I'm just going to do it with someone else. I'm not going to do it alone. I'm going to invite someone else in. And then another piece, I think guys can be a little like, insecure, like, oh, am I liked? Am I a valuable contribution to this person? And I would say our own insecurity, your own insecurity, is going to keep you from being a good friend and making friends. If like, let's say you're keeping track of, hey, who called the other guy last? Like, I have a good friend that I consider a great friend. And I've known him for, since about 2005. So like a couple decades. And I think I can count on one hand how many times he's called me. Like, we're talking maybe almost 20 years, right? In fact, I mean, when has he called me?
Yeah.
Right.
I have some friends like that.
Yeah. But I call him at least every couple months. And when I go visit him, like, he lays out the red carpet, and he's like, he's got an Airbnb, and he's like, come and stay in our Airbnb. He runs a business, and he's like, here's a gift card to my business. hang out, and he's going to spend almost every minute of his time for the week that I'm hanging out with him. He's going to invest in me and in the friendship. And he's just like, so he values the friendship. He just values it differently. And he's wired to think about what's in front of him. So I don't put my insecurity on him and my like, well, for it to be a valuable, like meaningful friendship, I need to talk at least every month or two. And we need to have a give and take. And he's just not wired like that.
Mm-hmm.
But when I'm in front of him, he's 110% there, and he really does value this friendship. And when I give him advice, or when I ask him for help, he's there, and he's like, so we got to kind of get off our own insecurities, and know for myself, this is what investing in the relationship means,
mm-hmm.
and then do that well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm seeing kind of the parallels between just like spiritual growth and sobriety growth, kind of the sense of like this is the path, or this is what works, and we don't get to choose what the path of salvation is for us. It's often handed to us, or we're like kind of guided onto it. And so there's a sense of what's an image. So there's a story in the Gospels, and it's a harder story to read because it's weird to our sensibilities. But there's this one moment where Jesus is walking with these disciples, and this one woman who's from a different nationality than they are is following them and begging that he would come heal her daughter. And at first he's like Jesus seems like he's being kind of coy with her, and then she delivers this line of like, he's like, "Do you want me to?" What does he say? He's like, "I've only been sent to like the children of Israel," and she says something like, "Oh, but even like the dogs will eat the scraps coming from the table." And kind of the principle from there is a sense of like, well, if you're seeking something, like you'll take any way you can to get there, or you'll make any effort, you do anything to get there. That story is not a commentary on how we should treat women by any means. It's much more speaking to this is a high calling, to grow spiritually, to grow in sobriety, to grow in depth of friendship with another person. It's a high calling. It's difficult. It takes sacrifice, and so I'm appreciating, you talking about how, if you value a person, if you value them on their own, regardless of anything else, it's going to take work to be with them. And it might take adjusting your own expectations, adjusting your own paradigm of friendship to factor in some of their idiosyncrasies. Probably they have to do the same for you as well. Yeah. But the other thing that I was appreciating though is this range of connection. Like there can certainly be this big, like, hey, I'm seeing this person for a week, we're spending every moment together, all these things. That's really cool. That's hard to do regularly. But you're also talking about connecting as a practice. Maybe I could set the resolve, like every day I'm going to try to connect with someone, and it might just be a text message, or it might be a Facebook share. But the key there is I'm going to make a daily intentional gesture of some sort, small or big, but daily. And I think that aspect gets missed sometimes, as we're waiting for people to pursue us, or we try to like only go for like the super big, deep, profound, and everything. So yeah.
So I wonder, Reese, can I share one aspect of my experience and see if you
of course,
how you would, like, I don't know if psychologize is the right word, but do a little analysis, help me understand this experience of mine.
Okay.
So growing up without a dad, I felt like there was a real, like, there's an aspect missing of just that, like, I want to like wrestle and have horseplay and like and feel positive masculine affection / aggression in a safe environment, and that was just, it wasn't a part of my growing up, right? And so then being a man, being married, and then I had this friend that had did martial arts, right? And so he was, and it was a part of even his like Christian discipleship. It had been impactful for him in his own finding God and his own personal growth. And so me and another friend were like, hey, you should teach us. Like, we don't know anything about this. And I'm very much like in my head, and I just come out of college where it's, you read books all day, right? And I wasn't on a sports scholarship. Uh, so then we started engaging in this experience of martial arts, and I got a lot more in my body, and like, this is a part of this growth process. But then I got to spar and wrestle with these other men, and I discovered, like, wow, this is something that's just been lacking in my life. And for me, it was very, maybe healing is too strong of a word, but it kind of reintegrated this part of my life that wasn't integrated. And then since then, it's been important for me. It's like, whether it's martial arts, whether it's and now it's wrestling with my boys, and I'm teaching them some martial arts, whether it's now physical fitness and challenging myself and doing some like strength training and all this, but like getting in my body and experiencing like masculine friendships where there's positive, like, physical. And is it wrong to say affection / aggression, or is that right? Like, is that the best way to describe, like I had this buddy that we would do martial arts with, and he would have a lot of pent up frustration at the end of the week, and I felt like my ministry to him was like, let him just get out his aggression in a safe manner. And I mean, most of the time I wasn't getting hurt, and but like, just that whole experience, like, what is that, and is that something that you think men need to pursue more in their life? And are there connections to that, and whether it's gender dysphoria or just some of that like maybe unwholesome ways that we pursue same-sex affection and aggression, and versus, is this a more wholesome way to do it?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So some of this is gonna be a little bit speculative on my part, but I'm always happy to offer an opinion. So a couple of things that seem really beautiful in that scenario. So something like martial arts in particular is going to bring you very much back into your body. And just like in general, I feel like, especially as we veer more and more into this very digital age, we're dealing with, Gen Z and the tech natives, where, like, internet problems, internet addictions abound. To be embodied, to be in the body is, I think, generally always going to be a good thing. I mean, I'm sure there's going to be some bad examples, but especially if it's a structured, kind of contained, maybe even kind of ritualized, I get in my body, I feel myself, I move my limbs. There's a lot of ways that's really good. Releasing chemicals and endorphins, and like strengthening yourself, and just like being in your senses, like that on its own, I think, is going to have a lot of value, like, anyway. So that seems like a good thing. The way you describe it, as you go there regularly with a couple guys, it almost sounds like getting into like a flow state. And that's a reference to Mikhail Csikszentmihalyi, who developed this concept of the flow states, these like optimized experiences. It's challenging, but not too challenging. You're able to kind of track your movements, track your progress as you go. You know why you're doing it. There's meaning assigned to it. There's value assigned to it. It's enjoyable. You're able to be fully present in this moment as you're doing it. That's enjoyment. Which is different than pleasure. Pleasure is a physiological response. You touch the right spots, you get pleasure. Enjoyment has to be crafted and it has to be worked for, and you can be achieved on your own. But I think there is definitely a richness to, we've achieved that together. I was thinking earlier about kind of the difference between a friendship based on shared interests versus a friendship based on shared struggles. Not that they're mutually exclusive by any means, but I would imagine that there's an aspect of struggle to something like we're doing martial arts together. We're literally grappling with each other. There's a physical struggle component there too, and like the physical struggles, easily become an analog to the internal struggles as well. I'm learning to manage my anger. I'm learning to master my passions. And so I get my body into it. I think there's something really beneficial about that as well. The variable component, that's maybe a little further outside of my complete specialty does have to do with gender. I would speak very carefully about what gender differences there are and aren't, because I think there are some just innate physical differences between men and women that we can't ignore. But there is also a lot of like social conditioning that goes into what men perceive we are expected to be and to do. So I'm sure that is a component there too. That there is a way where men maybe gravitate more comfortably to being a bigger energy with each other, or for us, maybe our threshold for aggression is a little bit higher, and so we can handle more energy and experience it as connective before it crosses a threshold and now becomes toxic. uh, so, and maybe that has to do with social conditioning. Maybe that is something like inherent to us, but I do observe it does seem to be a reality that exists for many men, not all. And not to say like you're a bad man if you don't like connecting in this way. But yeah, I know for myself, like, it's been part of my journey where I have not always liked that. I did martial arts as a kid, and I mean, I quit for a couple of reasons. One of which was I just didn't like it. Like, I didn't like rough contact with people, and I didn't know I could connect in a deeper way that way. But now, 20 years later, and add in a few creaky joints, so that's a challenge. I'm kind of drawn to that idea though, of like I actually I'd like to be more rough, or more struggle more with the men in my life, and do more, because I've had a long season of doing the coffee shop dates, doing the pub nights, and doing the we share ideas where we're in our heads. I can do that. That's fun. That's comfortable. I want to do things with my body now. I want to work on I want to build a house, or wrestle, or go camping together or something like that's engages more of my person, because I feel like there's something that's been imbalanced and I'd like to correct that balance. So
Yeah.
long answer to your question, and I think it was a really good question. But yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yes, life psychology, folks. You heard it first here. So well, I mean, I've really appreciated this, and it's so someone left a comment, the observing friendship being severely undervalued in today's society, and I think I'd agree with that. Like, it becomes really easy to use people, or to prior, especially with the rise of hookup culture, to be just being like, well, I can get my jollies off with this person, and so I'm good, or I get my sexual needs met here, so I'm good, but I don't actually need to be intimate or connected with the person. So with things like that going on in the background, as well as just we're super caught up with like, here's what I need to do to survive. I need to work all the time, and I'm caught up in all of these projects and things. Or like you mentioned, like I'm watching a show. Uh, you know, uh, although I have found it really connective and fun to like watch a show with someone and then like talk about it. Hence my other podcasting work. But yeah, it's good to be talking about this. And any last thoughts from you? Like, say somebody is like kind of listening along and feeling like, hey, I would like more of this, like friendship thing we're talking about. What do I do? Where do I start? It seems like a really big, daunting process.
Yeah. I mean, I would say C.S. Lewis's Four Loves is a great book. Also, Lord of the Rings. I'm one of those Tolkien fans that never stop reading Lord of the Rings, and I've read it to my kids multiple times. And I would say one of the major themes of that trilogy and of The Hobbit is friendship, and in particular is masculine friendship. And I've actually been reading a history of Lewis and Tolkien, and how their stories interacted with the reality of World War One, and their experiences in World War One, and both of them were in the trenches, fighting in World War One. And the model of the fellowship, you could also just say the friendship of the ring, is some of that model is the camaraderie that grew during warfare when you're in a trench, and you are meeting life and death. And so I would say, yeah, read and meditate on the Lord of the Rings and find that theme in it. And I would say that's within my so my friends have shaped my view of friendship. But when it comes to like reading or study or thinking, I would say Tolkien and Lewis have shaped my view of friendship more than anything else.
That sounds like a really beautiful start, and some really accessible reading as well to look at how friendship is depicted, because it's a very understandable, believable there. Yeah, that's really wonderful. And if someone wanted to reach out to you to talk more about this or about other things, where can you be found on the internet or in the world?
Yeah, so I'm on Twitter at IAHSH. I'm on, you can reach out, see our website for the nonprofit that I lead called Brilliance Labs. So brilliancelabs.org. I also lead a podcast called Jesus in the Upper Left with Multiply PDX. And so you can find it on any podcast or YouTube platform. Jesus in the Upper Left or Multiply PDX will get you to that podcast.
All right. Well, those sound like some great things to look up for all of you on Twitter and on the website, on the internet. Cool. Well, thank you, Ahshuwah, for sharing some time and some story. And by proxy, it sounds like you have some running feet going around behind you. Thank you for sharing your family as well. But yeah, thank you again, listener, for tracking along with us. If this sort of thing is important to you, you can drop us a few dollars at patreon.com/outer circle and join our community that way. I'm on Instagram at New Pattern Counseling and also on Facebook as Moses Reese Basimio. So do stay in touch, and we will be back with more conversations. Thanks.